Hey, welcome everybody. Today we got a very special guest, Mr. Dave. Oh, holy shnikes. My phone just dropped. We're back. We're live. We got a very special guest today, Mr. Dave Hollis from the Hollis Company. I'm going to post that here so that everybody knows who we're talking to and what's going on. Dave, if you're on there, feel free to, let's see, how do I pin that? Okay, we're having some issues here. Okay, Dave from the Hollis Company, Dave Hollis is going to be joining us. Super excited. Let's see, have you requested yet? Yeah, there you are. Let me bring you in here, buddy. Okay, we're waiting for him while he's doing that. Let me try that post again. Hey, man. You'd think I'd have this figured out by now.
Oh, you're not the head of IT over there, are you?
What's that?
You're not the head of IT over there, are you?
Not the head, bro. I'm at the very bottom of the IT pool. You know, every time I get on these, I get stressed because I'm like, okay, I've had a lot of difficulties. These are really neat though, because I don't know how familiar you are if you've been doing any IG live videos, but we can use these and then we can turn them into our podcast, which is awesome. And then we can also, cut up little snippets and we can take like the best of when you're being super awesome today, we can cut those out and just re-awesome it out into the world. So it's really neat, but I still haven't quite mastered it yet. So
that's okay. Hey, guess what? 2020 gives a lot of grace and a lot of forgiveness for all the things, including technology. Please.
You know what? I love that. 2020 is kind of like all bets are off. It's sort of like if you mess up, it's like, well, could it be worse? Just look around you.
You know what's crazy? I just was having a conversation this morning with someone. If there was a gift that has been afforded to all of us in 2020, it was the illusion of control that we previously believed ridiculously that we actually had has been completely shattered. There is no control at all. And now that we've been given the gift of understanding that we actually have no control, we can focus on the only thing that we can control, which is how we show up today. And so in a world, right, like I think there was this like hubris, the conceit that, we can control the variables, or that we can, in worrying about the past, fix what's happened, or in the worry of the anxiety for what might happen next, how long, what's it going to be like. That doesn't actually serve what ends up happening next either. The only thing, truly the only thing that you can control is how you decide to show up for yourself today. And I don't know that it's a thing that we necessarily thought as much about until we realized how little control we have because of the circumstances that have shown up at our doorstep in the midst of this year.
I mean, that's well said. And, I've been kind of trying to focus with my peeps, and it sounds like you're on the same page. Of sort of like, let's look at this as an opportunity, as bad as all this is, let's sort of say, okay, what can we take from it? What can we learn? How can we pivot? And just like you were saying, it's sort of like this forces us to shine a spotlight on certain things. And one of those being, we can't control the world no matter what's going on.
Yeah.
We can't control others. We can't, and one of that's such a huge part of a healthy, successful mindset is to just sort of say, look, all I can control is me. And belief, and then you obviously got to believe in yourself and get to that point where you work to where you've got the confidence, and the perception of the world is sort of like, okay, obstacles are temporary roadblocks, waiting for solutions. I'm gonna kick ass, take names, and there's nothing that can stop me. And there's all this stuff around me it's gonna get in my way. I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna fail, it's gonna stop me temporarily, but I'm gonna keep going. Like that's humongous. So thank you for sharing that.
No, for sure. I will say this. It's a strange thing, but I've been writing on my next book, and in February, wrote some of the first words of what will be a book that comes out next year at some point that I had no concept of what their meaning might mean inside of the world that we live inside of. But the quote that I wrote down was, in this rush to return to normal, let's take this time to actually consider which pieces of normal are worth rushing back to. And I think in this space, in this time that we have been given, even though no one voted for it, no one would necessarily have wanted to accept the headwinds or the struggle that this kind of upside down time comes with, it is a chance for us to do an inventory on what of the pieces of what our normal used to look like ought to be carried forward in whatever the new normal ends up looking like. Like, we're not going back to the way things were.
Right.
But you can either see that as a thing to grieve, or you can see that as an opportunity to actually hone in on and focus on the things that truly matter in a way that set your life up for the best kind of new normal when we get out the other side of this thing. And man, there have been so many things in my own experience of these last 6 months that I would have never foreseen as a part of the story of my story. And yet it is forcing this wholesale inventory of what actually matters and a focus on the things that I actually want to have as a part of my normal going forward when life returns to whatever it ends up looking like.
Well, that's exactly right. So, right, it's sort of like, okay, this morning I opened up my phone and I no longer can wake up like when I was a spring rye young lad, like at one point in my life. So I kind of, I'm reduced to sort of, I need at least a couple of minutes and I try to focus on positive news. I have this app called Flipboard that you can choose what you want to watch, and I keep it to that. But other stuff sneaks in, and my guilty pleasure is celebrity stuff. Anyways, Jessica Simpson pops up onto my phone in this full yoga pose, just lost 100 pounds. And I was like, and she's like showing off her new, and it just reminded me how some people are using this quarantine period and using it, like we were just talking about, like as an opportunity and resetting certain parts of their life. Guarantee you she has, granted, it's possible she got gastric bypass surgery, but assuming that she did it the right way, she's now developed some habits and created this new lifestyle change for her that, had this COVID not happened, most likely wouldn't have happened. And that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like, there's all these different areas of your life. I put them into these 5 core areas, and they're all equally important. You got to balance, you got to nurture, you got to maintain, you got to get rid of the failure habits and each replace with success habits. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing. I certainly am. I used to have my physical health core was going to the gym 3 times a week, playing basketball, lifting weights. I would habit stack that by listening to podcasts and Blinkists and taking notes. And that was like my routine for years, and I loved it. And that's how I was able to get moving. I just saw an article with you on how you're now changing the way you're getting moving. Is that right?
Yeah, my focus on health is a thing that has never been as important as it has been inside of a difficult season. To me, habits, as much as, habits are great when times are going well, habits are the thing that actually allow you to thrive inside of a season of struggle. And so if you can develop the kind of things that you'll need in the days that you cannot predict, in the nonlinear experience of this life that we're living through, right? Like, you can have 3 fantastic days in a row and have a bad day. The habits that you have on the 3 good ones are the thing that on the 4th day, when something goes sideways, will actually afford you the chance to show up well for your life. And so right. I have been asking myself a very, very specific question against the backdrop of my health, my mental, physical, emotional, relational, and spiritual health. What do I need in this season to afford me the opportunity to get a step closer to the vision of who I believe I'm becoming, right? Like, at first, I think starts, inside of upside down times, sometimes the ability for us to have the imagination to cast a vision for what we think this season, these hard times might produce, can be compromised. But if you can start by casting a vision of where you'd like to go, it gives you the breadcrumbs of the kind of habits you'd have to have against each of those 5 dimensions of health. And then in answering the question, what do I need in this season to make a single step closer to who I'm becoming in my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and if you can think about it through that lens, now you've got a recipe for how to build a daily routine that actually gives you a fighting chance at getting a step closer to who you'd like to become.
I love that. That's exactly right. And that's what I preach. So, I've read a lot of your stuff and seen your pages and your site and what you guys talk about. So it doesn't surprise me that we're on the same page. Habits, to me, it's we're everything. Habits don't care if they're good or bad, right? Or helping or hurting us. They're going to do their thing no matter what. And so, like you said, to me, one of the exercises I like to help people with is I sort of say, okay, let's flash forward to the end of your life. What is your, where do you want to be in each of these cores? Your mindset, your physical health, your relationships, your emotional health and giving back, and your career and your finances. Where do you see yourself in each of these? Now let's take a look. Let's put a big old spotlight on the habits that you currently have. And let's see, are they taking you in that direction? The actions you're taking every day, that routine, like you just said, that you've developed? If not, you got to change them. And habits, they're gnarly little things, right? They dig in deep, and they're hard to, they're like little ticks that just grab on. They're hard to pull off, and it takes some front-loaded work, and that's what people don't like. And we've become this instant generation, right? Where it's like, we're so used to just clicking a button, hitting something, and getting a car delivered to us to drive us where we want, an Amazon package. Oh my God, it took 2 hours instead of 1 hour. Like, we're so used to our food. My old business, that's what I did, restaurant delivery service, like a Grubhub, getting your food delivered to you. So, we're spoiled on this, and we want that low-hanging fruit, and we can get it in a lot of ways in our life. But undoing bad habits there's no way to work around that system other than making a commitment to yourself, buckling down and saying, I'm going to do this no matter what every day until it's formed, and I undo that bad habit and I replace it with a good one. And you've got to hold yourself accountable. You've got to. If you just try to do it like, oh, I'm going to do this, guess what's going to happen? Just like New Year's resolutions, right? You see everybody in the gym that first couple days, and then they're all gone by that.
For me, the question that I have been asking every single day is, how do I feel about myself when I'm by myself? And I think for anyone who's listening, one of the most important questions you can ask is, how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself? And the answer to that question has been the driver for my own accountability. Because at the end of the day, I feel the best about myself when I have created integrity between who I know I'd have to show up as to actually manifest this vision of who I'm becoming, and the way that I actually showed up. So if there's a delta between who I should have or wished I had shown up as and who I actually shown up as, that space is where regret or shame or unfulfilled potential or compromised confidence ends up living. It changes the way that I feel about myself. But when I know, oh, I've cast a vision for who I want to be, I've, in casting that vision, answered the question of who and how I need to show up on this day, the only day that I can control. When I've actually created integrity between that person I'd hope to show up as and the way I actually showed up in the day, I feel fantastic about myself. And so if you, number one, you have to have a vision, right? Like if you don't know where you're headed or you don't know who you're becoming, it's going to be really hard for you to develop a set of goals, a set of habits that are going to actually give you the thing you have to be accountable for. But once you have a vision for where you're going, now you know, oh, this is where I'm going, and this is what it's going to take to get there in each of my mental, physical, emotional, relational, and spiritual health. These are the things I have to do. And these are the things I have to do every single day. And on the days when I commit to and I'm able to do the things I know I have to do, I create integrity with that person that I'm becoming in a way that lets me sleep well at night, that lets me feel proud of myself, that makes me feel that sense of progress, that creates the momentum to have me waking up the next day feeling like I can go chase down the continued progress towards that vision of who I'm becoming.
So I call what you just said, I call it the success loop. So, and that's exactly right. It's like your momentum feeds off, like more momentum. That's my whole thing. That's my website, momentum.com, because that is everything. You can't see it, feel it, hear it, touch it, but we all know it's there. You watch a football game and you see it turn on a dime when that one play goes to the other team, and then all of a sudden, what looked like an unsurmountable point deficit, they turn around and they end up winning the game. You see it with businesses that seem like they're on their last leg, and then they get that one jolt somehow. They get one client or they get that one product, and they end up dominating. It's there. And how do we tap into it? how do we harness that? And that's what my whole mission and goal in life is like, how do we get into that? And what you're just saying reminds me exactly of this success loop that I talk about, which is like, okay, you start taking the actions, you start feeling better about yourself. Because you feel better about yourself, you want to take more actions. You take more actions, you start feeling better at yourself, right? And then you're building that momentum this way versus the failure loop, which most of us are caught in, which is like the victim sort of like, this is life, like I can't do this. My brain's broken. I'll never get in that shape. I'll never have that much money. I'll never be in this relationship, and you don't do anything about it. You just wind yourself and to others about it, and then nothing happens other than no actions happen, and then you start to feel worse about yourself. Yeah. And then because you feel worse, you even take less action, and you complain more, right? And you're stuck.
Well, it's interesting. If you think about a car, right? Where does a car get its best gas mileage? It gets its best gas mileage on the highway. Why does a car get its best gas mileage on a highway? Because it's already in motion in a way that requires less energy from the engine to maintain its speed. And so we, like a car, as we get into motion, the inertia, the momentum ends up being something that on the days we don't feel like it, on the days when life shows up and throws a curveball, we're already moving in such a way that the energy that's necessary for us to maintain our momentum is just less, so long as you're already in that state of self-propelling yourself toward the thing that you're trying to run towards. And so momentum is such an important thing. I'll also throw out that inevitably I'm also someone who has struggled with motivation at times. And so there, in addition to knowing where you want to go, in addition to creating momentum, I also think you have to be conscientious of the things that have historically thrown you off track, the things that have traditionally compromised your motivation, so that you can develop a set of hacks that will allow you to generate or manufacture motivation on the days that you don't feel like it. For me, some of it ends up just being a robotic religious discipline to the way I do certain things in a certain order every single day, so that I can't even negotiate with myself. I know exactly what I have to do first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. I do it in the same order at the same time. I wake up at the same time. I start with my gratitude. I get into a spiritual practice. I go move my body. I then fuel it. Like, I know exactly what I'm going to do every day, because the foundation working for me is the way that it works only if I commit to doing it on an every single day basis. But also on the days when I start to have my motivation compromised, my diving into a gratitude practice or surrounding myself with positivity is it's just a massively important thing to making sure that I don't get distracted by the negativity of the world in a way that would throw me off track. That I am connected to the way that habits end up working and the way that I can be triggered at times in a way that could, if I wasn't conscientious of it, allow me to indulge in some kind of negative coping mechanism. The more that you can stay connected to what your triggers are and the way that you maybe have previously indulged in something that throws you off track, now maybe instead of doing the thing that throws you off track, you can catch it before you do it and maintain the momentum and maintain the motivation, especially on the days that you don't feel like it. The idea that there's a cue that produces some kind of an action that gives you some kind of reward. If you haven't read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, man, I'll throw it out there as a thing that fundamentally changed the way I thought about habits. But identifying the triggers that you have that might undermine your motivation, that might undermine you staying connected to the habits that set you up for success, is as much a part of actually thriving through life as developing a routine is in the first place.
I love that. And that's exactly right. Right, like we were saying earlier, like habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting you. And so it's like we all have a routine. It's not like some people have them and some people don't. And you hear that word routine, and I think a lot of people tend to think, well, that's just for people that are trying to better themselves and they develop this routine. It's like, no, you have a routine. What is your routine? Is it getting up and eating, a crappy breakfast that's gonna, slow you down, and then not doing any sort of exercises or moving, not saying what you're thankful for, just kind of going through the motions, and then meanwhile you're negatively talking to yourself about, I don't want to get up, I don't want to go today. Like, that is going to compound over time. Your habits. Here's my equation of life. Ready, Dave? your belief system plus your repeated actions plus time equals who you will become.
That's good.
Would you agree with it?
Oh, that's good. I like
Right?
that. Yeah.
Everything we're talking about right now. It's like you get your mindset, what you believe, then it's like your repeated actions. What are you doing? Then time's going to do its thing, whether you like it or not. And then that is who you are. So
Yeah.
that's already happened. The equation of life's either going to work for or against you. And so at this point, it's like you need to ask yourself, am I using it for or against me? Is that helping or hurting me? And then you say, okay, how can I change it? And just like you're saying, okay, so what is my routine? Morning routine is one of the biggest things, right? Routines are great throughout the day, and everybody lives different lifestyles, so people are going to have different ones. But morning routine is one of those things that kind of universally, we can all look at and say, make sure you get some sort of movement in there. Make sure you get a healthy breakfast. Make sure that I personally say my mantra, which at the end has what I'm grateful for, but at the very least, what you're grateful for, I think is huge. My mantra is like this positive self-talk of all the things that I personally know that are important to me and I want to remind myself on and are working on every day, right? So that's going to be different for everybody, but I've got to the point where I've memorized it. I say it in the shower every morning while I'm doing my stretches because, again, habit stacking. I actually pulled or tore my ACL and my meniscus last year, and so now I have to do these stretches every day. And at first, like you were saying, motivation-wise, I was like, oh, this sucks. Like I have to do this now every day. And then I was like, okay, how do I reduce the friction on this? And I was like, okay, well, I got to say my mantra anyway. And then I don't even really think about it when I'm doing it, right? So I'm doing 2 positive things at once. And by the time I finish both those things and I've taken my shower, I come out and I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like I'm ready to go.
Well, what's interesting too, I love the idea of habit stacking. I'm a super habit stacker. I have been doing a practice, as crazy as this is going to sound, inside of quarantine with my dedication to hand washing as a part of keeping myself healthy. Every time I've gone to the bathroom, as I am getting ready to wash my hands, drop to the ground and do 20 quick push-ups. And the idea that combining what otherwise would already be a thing I'm doing, washing my hands after I go to the bathroom, with body movement has just become something that is integrated into what I'm already doing. But beyond habit stacking, sometimes when you start talking about habits or routines, it can feel overwhelming for people when they think about all the things that they have to think about. And so I want to encourage anyone who has not yet developed a fantastic routine or has not yet developed a set of habits that they feel like set them up for success. There's an idea of something called Keystone Habits, the idea that there is a habit that ends up having a bunch of domino effect in other parts of your life. And if you can identify just a handful of the most important habits that would have this rippling effect in your life, it will fundamentally change all of your life. And so like body movement for me is an unbelievable keystone habit. I get up and every day for at least 30 minutes a day, I move my body. I've been running like crazy. But running as a keystone habit ends up being something because the roads for me have been some combination of therapy and church, because the endorphins that are released are changing my mind, because of having moved my body, it influences the way that I'm now thinking about how I'm going to, with nutrition, approach fueling my body with things that bless my body. All the things that happen for the rest of my day have a compounded knock-on effect that come out of that single habit. Making your bed. As much as making your bed, and there's a great speech from Admiral McRaven, like making your bed is a keystone habit. Because starting your day with accomplishing a small thing reminds you of your ability to accomplish small things. You get to feel satisfied in your ability to be productive. And you now believe that you can accomplish other things for having accomplished something small to start your day. But it doesn't take creating the greatest routine or all of the things and habits at the beginning. If you were to just pick a couple of things, what you'd find is you have inadvertently or maybe totally on purpose created something that now, because of the downstream benefits of that single decision, has you thinking differently about nutrition, or has you thinking differently about productivity, or has you thinking differently about your capacity to handle whatever the day is going to throw your way.
That's so right. And right, it's developing. I actually hadn't heard that term Keystone Habits, but to me, like the way I look at it very similarly, it's a similar concept. I always say universal principles they're there. People say them in different ways, but it's funny when you talk to people that get it and that have discovered these principles. And I always like to hear different takes on how somebody else's brain sees the same thing I do. And to me, the Keystone Habits concept is basically you've got each of these 5 core areas, and each are equally important. Again, you can't neglect any. For a little bit of time you can, but overall you got to keep them balanced. You got to keep nurturing them. And there's always going to be 1 to 3 in each one that is, I would say, a keystone. And it's so important that you make that part of your daily life and your daily routine, and you replace whatever, like if you don't have it, like you just said, getting moving, like your body. That's an obvious one that we can all relate to. It's like we all know we should be moving. But what's key is it's customizable to everybody. Like, so you use the example of making your bed, which is a great one. And I too do that. And I love that feeling I get when I've got a nice made bed, and then when I come back at the end of the day and you get in bed and you're like, versus, but certain people, if they want to get that same feeling, there's another thing they can do, right? Whatever, if they want to get that same, maybe it's cleaning up the living room from the night before or whatever. That's the beauty of it. There's not just like you hear like these successful people, and I've read, I'm sure you have as well, hundreds and hundreds of books, and you hear like get up at 7, and to me it's like, yeah, in the spirit, getting up early, starting your day, but if there's also night owls, and there's people that are maybe more productive at night. So the point is, like, you got to learn who you are. You got to shine that spotlight on yourself, and how do you reduce the friction in developing this habit, right? Like if you hate running, don't say, okay, I'm going to run every day for the next, because no, you hate it. There's other things you can do to get moving.
Yeah, I will throw this out. Like when you think about what are the handful of things that you have an ability to control that would fundamentally change every other thing that you do. I do think that body movement is a big one. I do think nutrition is a big one. But I will tell you that a gratitude practice, starting your day with a gratitude practice of some kind, will fundamentally change the way that you think about every other thing in your day. In part because if you are forced to make a list of the things that you're grateful for, it will change the way that you spend your day on the hunt for things to be grateful for. And if you are able to go out in the world looking for the things that you can have gratitude for, you will find them. Right? Like this is one of those, like, if you think you're going to have a good day, you will have a good day because that evidence will present itself to you because you are actively looking for it, in the same way that if you wake up and are frustrated and having a hard day and you feel like it's going to be a hard day, you will also find evidence of that hardness presenting itself because it's the thing that you're looking for. And so as Keystone Habits go, if you were to, as a listener, only implement one thing, just deciding every morning that you're going to actively write down the things that you're grateful for, and in having written them down, be on the pursuit all day long for where you can find gratitude, you'll find it in 100 small things. They aren't going to be these magical unicorn moments. It's going to be a small thing. It's going to be a little look from one of your kids. It's going to be the nice text that you got from somebody who cares about you. It's going to be a meme that made you laugh. But if you go into the day knowing that you are on the hunt for good, you will find it, and it will fundamentally change the way that you now have an optimism about every other part of the world that you are traversing.
That's exactly right. And by saying what you're grateful for, I always talk about like this, you've heard me say a couple times now, shining the spotlight on your life. So many of us we think we know what we're doing each day. We think we know our habits and generally how things go, but most of us have no idea. And we're shocked when we go, okay, so, there's always, that you've heard a million times, like write down all your habits. I never went that route. What I just started doing was literally just saying, okay, I know when I started this whole journey, I was like, I know I have bad habits. I'm going to just start writing down the top ones. And I wrote down like my top 3, like these are habits I need to change. And then by being aware of those, and literally I had it as a list right on my desk in front of my computer that I would look at every single morning and remind myself. And at first, it was like we were saying, it's front loaded. It didn't happen. And then I would but what slowly started happening was I would catch myself in these, if they were failure habits, Or I would catch myself, if it was a success habit I was trying to develop and I wasn't doing it, I slowly started to become aware. And then the more I became aware, the more, and accountability by basically looking at myself. And then I developed this system, which I'm actually turning it into an app, and it's going to be gamified, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be addictive, just like social media and these games that give you zero, soul-filling victory, just hollow victories. And you're actually going to level up on screen. When you level up on screen, you're going to level up on life. And I'm super excited about that. But basically, it's gamifying the process, right? And I started years ago by just writing down. I would score myself at the end of the day. I'd just say, okay, how did you do overall with these 3 habits you're trying to track? And then from that, it grew into more habits, and it grew into the 5 cores. And then so now I've got a lot, but you can't start that way. You got to start, like you were saying, I like the Keystone Habit. It's like just start with 1 habit for each core, and sort of say, okay, where do I stand? What's the one thing that's hurting me the most? And then just write that down, put it in front of you, and then you're forcing yourself every morning to become aware. And then at the end of the day, simply just give yourself a score, like, okay, these are my 5. Just put in the notes in your phone. And then at the end of the day, just say, okay, today was a 3. And it's not rocket science, but at least you're holding yourself accountable, and you're reminding yourself, and then it forces you to sort of think back in the day, I could have done this, I could do that. And then you're just slowly starting to make your brain sort of awake and aware of these things when they happen, and you start to catch yourself. And it's really neat when that shift starts to occur, when that failure habit starts to switch over to a success habit, because you put in the commitment and you're holding yourself accountable, and you actually start to see yourself doing it. And then you step into that success loop like we were talking about.
I love it. What's interesting is, because times have been changing as fast as they are, like we're all experiencing collective grief and what normal used to feel like, and the connection that used to exist in community being compromised by quarantine, all the things that I have found, my habits are a little more seasonal than I actually thought they were before. Like the thing that I need inside of this particular window of time is just a little bit different than what I may have needed when life availed itself to me in a different way, or when the pressures that I was experiencing in life were a little bit different. And so the frame that I have been working through in defining my habits has been very much having this vision for where I'm heading, but then asking that specific question: what in this season do I need in my physical health? What in this season do I need for my mental health? And I've tried to answer the question in 3 specific things that I need for each of mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and relational health, so that in having created those answers, I now can develop the set of habits that would afford me actually making the things that I need accommodated. And so in my mental health journey, what do I need in this season for my mental health? The first thing I wrote down was professional help. I need to sit with a therapist. The second thing I wrote down was I need to fight for peace, right? So I've been very intentional in sitting on a rock in nature after a run, sitting on my back patio, listening to some worship music at the end of a long day. And the third thing that I need is boundaries. If there is someone who is trying to steal my pursuit of joy, they are not allowed inside of my life right now, because life is already as hard as it is. Now, I've identified these 3 things that I need, and so now my calendar has to be a reflection of my intention. All right, when is my next meeting with my therapist? My everyday routine has to be a reflection of my intention. I'm going to go sit and have a meditation on a rock. I'm going to do some time in conversation with God at the end of a day. My commitment to my boundaries have to be a reflection of my intention. And I've repeated that now for my physical health and my emotional health, and the way that I'm reading books or focusing on nutrition, in my relational health, and the way that I'm spending time with my kids, or working on being a great co-parent with my soon-to-be ex-wife. Like I know the things that I need to do in this season to afford me this opportunity of becoming who I want to be. And the habits that I need, like I say, they tend to be a little bit more seasonal, because the things that I need right now are likely going to change as the world changes. I think the way that I, inevitably come out of this quarantine, or the way that my next business venture, or the way that, getting divorced becomes more normal, or whatever it ends up being, is going to dictate a little bit of a modification of the habits that are necessary to show up well for the vision of who I'm becoming. And so I want to encourage people who maybe have an idealized version of what habits look like to question, are those habits things that serve the thing that you need in real time to still go toward the vision of who you're becoming, but acknowledging the specific conditions inside of which you are trying to get there through? Because it is not static. The world that you are living inside of is changing under your feet. And so there may be times when your habits have to accommodate the circumstance that you find yourself inside of so that you give yourself a fighting chance to actually get there.
Amen. Yeah, I mean that's exactly it, and what you were saying earlier, everybody's different, and you're gonna have different habits on there. And somebody I just saw, a couple people wrote, well, how do I get rid of my bad habits? I think you did a good job of kind of answering that, and I'll back you up with, again, like if you missed it earlier, we were saying, it ain't gonna be easy. So anybody who tries to sell you the elixir of life for $9.99, it's gonna break all your habits. Run. They're front loaded though. That's the good news. And they don't care if they're good or bad. That's the other good news. And if you've got a bad one, the first step is like we were saying earlier, shine that big spotlight and you're like, okay, in these 5, you have your 5 areas, mine are very similar. So whichever your 5 areas are, the 5 main areas of your life, it's like, okay, what in each area is helping me that I'm doing? And how can I rev that engine and do more of that? And then what's hurting me? And just don't overdo it. Don't go crazy, 1 to 3 on each. And then just focus on that, prioritize and focus on that top one. And then like you were just saying, you got to build that into your life. And you've got to build that. You can't just hope that it's going to happen, right? I think another great book, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh, love.
He said something in regards to, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Don't quote me on that, but it's something very similar. In other words, if you don't have a system in place and you're just hoping and you're just like, okay, well, yeah, I want to do this. And then you're going to find out, because it's that we're living in that instant generation and that low hanging fruit's everywhere, that if it doesn't come easy, so many people are just going to move on. And if there's not some sort of an accountability metric and a system in place, which is what, to me, that's what it's all about. You have a system. And what's crazy to me is that everybody that's successful, quote unquote, right? What is success really? What is happiness? But we'll call it, everybody that I see that's more happy than most, let's just say, has a system. But what's crazy to me is that there's not like a universal system that everybody can use.
Yeah.
And that's where my journey started with all this. Like, I sold my business, and on paper I was like, okay, I'm successful now. I exited for $380 million last year, and it had been everything I'd been working on from my suicidal point in college to when I hit my rock bottom up till then. But luckily, I'd been reading personal development books along the way, and so I already kind of knew what was going to happen when it happened. And sure enough, guess what happened? It felt amazing, I'm not going to lie, for 10 seconds. But then I was like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And what's next? And so it's like, that's when I realized it's like, it's not just about one thing, and you can't just build your life. And if you're in pursuit of just the career or the finance part, which a lot of people end up focusing on, you're never going to be fully happy, right? You got to build your life, your structure around these other things, your relationships, whether you're married or not, whether, you're dating, your friendships, even your colleagues, your acquaintances, the people you run in the street. Are you looking people in the eye? Are you just looking down at your phone? Are you liking your friend's text message, or liking your friend's photo on social media that you haven't seen in 2 years? Or are you like picking up the phone or actually reaching out and be like, hey man, how have things been? And obviously our lives are busy. You can't keep in touch with everybody, but there are certain core things as humans that we need, and certain habits that you've got to incorporate into your life to make sure those needs are met. And when those needs are met, just like we were saying earlier, that's when you start feeling awesome and you step into that success loop, and then you feel good and you want to do more, and you take more action and you take more action and you feel better, and then you just start gaining that momentum and feeling better and better.
Yeah. I mean, I always go back to that question of how I feel about myself when I'm by myself, because any habit that needs to be addressed always comes up in the answer to that question. If I don't feel as good about myself when I'm by myself, it's likely because I've let something that previously had order or structure go. it's likely because I've indulged in some kind of negative coping mechanism instead of actually showing up the way that I'd hope. And so if you can come back to doing a little bit of self-awareness building and honesty around where you currently struggle with guilt or shame or underfulfilled anything, inside of the question of how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, you're usually going to get a set of breadcrumbs that are going to lead you to the kind of habit that might afford you an opportunity to create the kind of structure, the kind of routine, the substitution of one reaction to a trigger for something that is healthier or better, that affords you the chance to show up well for your life and stay on that path to who you're becoming in a way that creates pride, in a way that creates that integrity between who you'd hope to be and how you show up in any given day.
I love that. So let's get into a little bit more personal stuff. Where do you see yours? Like, so what are you currently working on? What are some of your top habits right now? 1 to 2, whatever. And where do you say, okay, this is where I am, and I'm trying to switch this part in my life so that I can be that person I want to be in 3, 5, whatever years?
Well, I can tell you against the backdrop of my physical health, as a for example, one of the things that I have identified that I need in this season is to challenge myself physically beyond the threshold of what I think I am currently capable of, so that I can, in the midst of a hard season, remind myself of my capacity to do hard things. So I am training in real time for an Ironman, which, send up your prayers, I have to swim in the ocean for 2 miles. I don't have any capacity to swim in the ocean, but I'm going to go do it. And I'm training to do it in part because when I ran a marathon earlier this year, when I climbed a mountain last year, like I have every time I've pushed myself to do something that felt like it went beyond what I believed myself to be capable of physically, it trained my brain to believe that I have a capacity to do more than I believe I can. And so, hey, I'm going through a hard season. I'm in the midst of a divorce. I'm in the midst of a little bit of an identity shift in what I thought my life might look like. And as I look at this blank piece of paper that has been handed to me, and I'm writing now the future that ends up looking different than what I thought, my physical challenge is as much a reminder of my capacity to do things that are bigger than or greater than I believe my capacity to be, so that as I write out the future of what ends up happening, I can do so with a reformed belief in what I am actually capable of. When I think about my emotional health and the kind of habits I'm building around emotional health, one of the things in real time as I'm processing harder things in real time is that I really want to understand why I think what I think and why I feel what I feel. Well, how do you create a habit around understanding your thinking or your feelings? For me, it's been indulging in nonfiction book reading, a thing that I'll be honest, I did not do as much of until I realized how important it was for helping me transition through hard times. And so now the words of authors helping me in a book like Untethered Soul, as a for example, understand that I am not my thoughts, but I'm an observer of my thoughts. I am not my feelings, but an observer of my feelings. It has been a massive tool in helping me understand why I feel the things that I feel. In my goals for spiritual health, the idea that I have to carve out and create time to have conversations with our Creator and feel a sense of a bigger power being a part of my life has never ever been more important. But that takes intention and discipline in the way that it's a part of my calendar and a part of my morning routine to actually accommodate me leaning into it. So I am, like I say, I'm very robotic in the way that I approach every single morning. I get up at the exact same time. I immediately walk and put on my shoes and my workout gear so that I cannot change my mind even if I don't feel like moving my body. I start with a gratitude practice and coffee. I sit and have a conversation with God, and then I immediately go on a run. I immediately get into the gym because I understand this connection that exists for me between moving my body and changing the way that I feel or think, and it affords me this chance to process whatever it might be sitting in the surface. As soon as I'm done, I do a meditation and I tend to journal, right? I want to immediately, first thing in the morning, get anything that's sitting in my unconscious closer to my consciousness so that I can deal with and frame appropriately the things that I'm going to go do for the rest of the day because of having, in that order, focused on gratitude, connected with God, moved my body, calmed my mind, processed my thoughts, and now let's go have a day. And so that order for me is the order that's worked. Then, I'm going to go have my 3 boring eggs. I'm going to, yes, have some nutrition, but that order for me is a thing that I had to tweak and figure out over time. But now that I've figured it out, I know, this is the thing, Dave, that you need every day, every single day, if you are going to create the foundation and springboard for the kind of day that you want to have. And so, go ahead.
No, please finish. Excuse me.
No, but so, it's like that for right now, that is the thing that works for me. And is there the chance that I will have to tweak it over time? Absolutely, because my life will change over time. The things that I have to focus on will change over time. But that for me is a routine, like I say, in the same order every single day, getting up at the same time, going to bed at a time that would accommodate me getting up as early as I do. Like my morning routine starts with making sure I'm asleep by a certain amount of time so that I can, with enough sleep, charge into the day and have the day that I want. And in a world where, again, the illusion of control is gone, there are so many things that inevitably are going to show up in our life. The more that you can orchestrate the things that you do every single day so that your day is now not contingent on life meeting you where you'd hope to be met, but instead is set up so that irrespective of the conditions that you find yourself inside of, you are in a position to thrive. That's the goal. Because this experience of life, the experience of grief, the experience of COVID, the experience of everything we're all going through, it is nonlinear. And so in a nonlinear world where you can, again, have 3 great days in a row and then have a bad one, predicting which day might be the bad day is an impossibility unless you have a great set of habits. When that bad day comes, you're not just going to have a bad day. You're going to find yourself thrown off the road, in the ditch, taking time to rebuild the car, to get it back on the road. If you have the habits, now you can survive, even maybe thrive through the hard day because of having set yourself up well.
That's right. And so what you just described to me, like that last example, that's a habit that would go into the mindset core, right? A habit of failing forward and being okay with falling on your butt or having a bad day and not looking forward to it. Let's not get crazy now.
Oh yeah.
You like, some people will be like, you're gonna fail and you're gonna get to the point where nobody likes it. It's not gonna feel good. But here's the difference. The difference is you immediately will able to start, instead of like being like, poor me, become that victim mentality. You become an owner and you go, you know what? That sucked. My car just broke down. Oh, and now I'm late for my meeting. And you just kind of go, okay, it's one of those days. And there's going to be good ones and bad ones. Or if you actually fall on your butt and fail doing something in particular that you're really excited about, or whatever, you go, okay, learned a good lesson there, and what did I get out of it? And again, it's not going to feel great, but by that little shift in your mind, and that being a habit of sort of like your mind, literally a habit of catching yourself when that happens, and instead of feeding into it as a victim, like switching turning the tables and becoming the owner and being like, okay, what would the owner of me do?
I love it. Hey, guess what? I've had seasons, certainly a midlife crisis kind of season 5 years ago, where I found myself very much like on my knees, God, why is this happening? And very much had a bit of a victim's mentality in looking for other people looking for a higher power to come in and save the situation. And I had this moment a couple years ago where, like, very clearly I heard, you're looking for a miracle. You are the miracle. Like, you have been actually bestowed the gifts that will afford you the opportunity to dig yourself out of this hole. You may find yourself in a valley, but you have the tools. It actually ends up falling on you, Dave, to do the work, to climb out of this thing. Quit waiting for somebody else to drop the rope in. You're the one that has to climb out. And for anyone who's listening and going through a hard time, you're the miracle. You have been given the gifts, and it's now to you to tap into and have belief in your ability to use those gifts, even when it's hard. And guess what? it's collectively hard. Like, no one is going through something easy right now, but the difference between the person who's going to thrive through this experience and the person who is going to stay stuck and it take longer to get out of it is just belief that you have been exclusively given a set of tools that will absolutely afford you the chance to take control of and move forward through the adversity versus the person who's waiting for someone else to come and fix the adversity for them. It doesn't make it easy, especially on, like those hard days, that fourth day after you've had a string of 3 good ones, but you still have to stay connected to the fact that you are, in fact, the miracle, that you've been given the tools and gifts, and it's your choice to get back up and keep on going.
Love that. And that's exactly right. And it kind of goes back to earlier what we were saying, and I want to make sure people watching this, the one thing that I despise is when you get people that just go on and on. And by the way, I'm not talking about you right now because I could see it might seem like that. But like you see personal development, self-help experts, and they say, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then they don't give you a way to do it. They go, oh, well, this is how I do it. And it's like what you were just saying earlier is a perfect example of like, you have a system. Like you have that morning routine is a system. Everybody's morning routine is going to be slightly different, but that's part of a morning routine is part of a system that you need to develop. And that's what I get into with people. And I say, look, you ain't going to do it on your own. You can be as inspired as you want by the words that just came out of somebody's mouth. And, and then you get all fired up. And just like we were saying earlier with New Year's, and then it's like, okay, a week later, you're back to your same old. You got to have that system. And I just want people to know that like these things aren't just going to happen overnight, and your mindset changing. What we were just talking about, you clearly have an owner mindset. I've developed an owner mindset. When I was in college, I was suicidal. I literally hit what I call my rock bottom, and it's in my book that I'm writing. And it was like this moment in my life where I was like, okay, well, this is it here. Okay, you can't really go anywhere below this other than killing yourself. Or you can kind of hit the reset button and just make a commitment to yourself right now. You're going to do whatever it takes. And I didn't have this exact conversation, but in retrospect, that's kind of the gist of it. It was sort of like, all right. And I was serendipitously introduced to this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah.
Dale Carnegie, which I'm sure you've read.
Oh, yeah.
I've read it probably 30 times. I used to read it every year for a while, but now, I mean, it's become it's ingrained in me. So, and if anybody that hasn't read that book, I highly recommend it. It was written like way back in the 30s.
Yeah.
Right. But if you read it today, and this is what we were talking about earlier with universal principles, it holds up just like somebody wrote it yesterday. And it's because a universal principle, if it's something that's like for instance, he talks about the gist of the book being just make the other person feel important. Don't make it all about you. Make sure that you're giving the attention, you're being empathetic, and you're basically focusing, and everything will come to you. Like the world will come to you when you have that. And it's so simple, yet as humans, our natural tendency is me, and we get in our own heads and we make it all about us, and we forget to do those little things. And especially now, like I was saying earlier, like looking somebody in the eye and smiling when you're walking by them, like people used to do back in the day. Now, you walk down the street, everybody's doing this, right? And asking somebody their name, remembering their name, little things, remembering details about, their kids and these things, like next time you see them, that makes a person just light up. The best sound a person will ever hear is their own name. So if you remember their name and details about their life. And so I digress a little bit, but the point is I got to that point where I was like, okay, there's a different way of looking at the world that I didn't see before. I didn't even really know about self-help, right? And I was like, okay, I'm going to become this insatiable self-help beast. I'm going to use myself as a human science experiment. And that's what I've essentially done over the last 25 years. And I just never stopped reading and growing. And it didn't happen overnight to go from my victim mindset to that, I call it fixed victim to growth owner is the way I call it essentially. And you go to that mindset but when and I can't point out an exact time it happened, but just knowing now at some point along the way, I went to that, what you were just saying, what I was saying, which is, you look at things a bit differently in terms of when you fail or when you have a bad day. And it's still going to sting sometimes and it's not going to be fun, but you're immediately able to recover and start taking action. That's the key. And you start taking those actions to then keep that momentum and going versus letting that stuff slow you down, build negative momentum, and then you get caught in that failure loop, like we were saying.
Well, one of the things I've been super connected to it over the last handful of days, maybe even weeks, is just this idea that sometimes we let the circumstances of our present compromise our ability to see the possibilities of our future. And as much as like we find ourselves in hard times, you have to disassociate your current circumstance from what these circumstances may be preparing you for, how the experience of this adversity or the tenacity that you're building or the perseverance that you're owning is going to prepare you for all the possibilities of your future. There's a great Les Brown quote that says, hope in the future is power in the present, right? Like you have to have a hopeful sense of where you're going if you will have any kind of power whatsoever in the present that you find yourself working through. And in the middle of times that feel upside down, I know it's been hard for me at times, and I'm sure it's been hard for people who are listening, to cast as positive a vision for their future as they might normally have, because the circumstances of our present feel as crazy, chaotic, overwhelming, all the things. But if you don't have that positive vision, you are in trouble in real time. And so when I was in the midst of trying to cast a vision for what my future might look like, cast a vision that would inform the kind of habits I'd need every day to get to that vision, the first thing I had to do, and I will argue to anyone who's listening, the first thing you'll have to do is identify the fears that you have of that future that are currently compromising the imagination or your capacity for the imagination to see it. And if you can deconstruct some of the fears that you end up having in a way that make that vision an actual possibility, now you've got a chance to actually work toward it and drive toward it. But you first have to be able to cast that vision, and whatever it is that's an impediment to you seeing it, work through it, because without hopefulness or positivity or optimism as a part of the story of your future, you are going to be stuck in this present. Do not let the circumstances of your present compromise the possibilities of your future, or you are in trouble.
Trouble with a capital T. And we mentioned this briefly earlier, and just since we're talking about systems and stuff, and I'll give one more little tidbit to people to do what you're just talking about. What I like to do, I literally have, I have this thing called my momentum book, and it's got little things in it that I read on a daily basis that just rev my engine in the morning. It's part of my morning routine. One of the things is my funeral list, and it sounds a little grim, but it's literally a list of what I want said at my funeral on these certain cores, and it's kind of ties, and then I say, okay, this is where I want to end up. What do I need to do? And if you're just caught in that the victims are always caught in the present. Like, oh, life sucks. There's nothing I can do about it. My future's going to be, versus, okay, this is where I want to end up. And yeah, things aren't so great right now, but it's not a total disaster. I can, it's not going to happen overnight. I'm going to use the equation of life to my benefit. My belief system plus my repeated actions plus time equals who I will become, right? So I'm going to start changing my belief system a little bit, looking at things a little bit different, my perception, and things will start shifting. And then but you have to look at that on a regular basis. So I recommend everybody has it. It's something I got years and years ago. I hate to say it, I don't remember even who it was from. I've read so many self-help books, and it just clicked with me. And then I've got a vision board right here. You see it, and it's always been on my vision board, and it's, what do I want said at my funeral? And I've literally got my 5 cores and what I want said. And when I ever get a little bit off track or things seem a little funky, and I'm like, and I look at that, and I'm like, and then I look at my habits, I'm like, gotta switch that one.
So good. It's so interesting, because I think there's 2 types of people. I am the latter of these 2. There are people who can cast the vision, and it will get them out of bed every single day to make a step closer to this vision of what their life can be, who they're becoming. They get excited about everything that's possible in their life. And then there are people like myself who I have used negative visualization, as crazy as this is going to sound, as a motivating factor for me getting up on the days I don't feel like it. And I have envisioned a dinner at my 60th birthday party where my now grown children are toasting the accomplishments of my, next 15 years of life. And there are two versions of the way the dinner shows up. Either, right, they are crying. There are so many tears in the room because of the way that I have modeled showing up for my life and being present in theirs and having impact on this world and being selfless and loving and all of those things. Or there's a version of that dinner where some of them don't show up and those that do don't have anything to say. And it can make me, I can cry thinking about the not having them have anything to say version. But I'll tell you what, I can stay connected to a responsibility that I have to making sure that that dinner goes as well as it possibly can. And on the days that I don't feel like it, man, I can connect to what would I hope that my then adult children would say as they're raising a glass to the pride that they have for the way that their father showed up in their life.
It's funny. I didn't get into that part of it, but I too have a funeral list of, if I continue on my current habits, like of some of the bad habits I had that I made way back when, like what my life would look like. And absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
Like the whatever you want to call it, whether it's using scare tactics to motivate you, inversely, whatever it is, right? It's not just that, hey, this is where I want to be. It's, well, what's going to happen to me if I don't change? I mean, that's a huge motivator. And to be honest with you, that's, I think, almost even more powerful than the other. But you got to have both. You got to know where you want to be, because then that helps you. But then it's like, okay, don't forget that, okay, if you literally stop exercising and you eat just Twinkies and Doritos today, and yeah, you may be 20 years old and your metabolism's kicking, but let's flash forward 20 years from now.
Yeah.
What are you going to look like? Where are you going to be? Like, and that's and it's with every one of these habits that you have in your life. And so it's sort of like, it's you think about the scary alternative. I love the dinner party idea, though. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, dude, this has been awesome. Normally I do these for 45 minutes to an hour. We've been a little bit over an hour, which I didn't mind one bit. It's been fantastic. You were dropping some serious knowledge bombs. Thank you so much for showing up, bringing it to us. You're the type of guy I want to keep in touch with. So on a personal note, I'm developing a networking group, and you seem like you'd be right fit for that if you're interested, but I'll reach out to you.
Right on.
Thank you guys, everybody, for showing up, and everybody had great questions. I tried to get to everything. Oh, one question I saw somebody ask, what was the name of that book? How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. If you haven't read it, it's a great place to start in your self-development journey. It just kind of reminds you, get out of yourself. Remember that other people are important, and that they look at the world through their lens, not yours. So anyways, thanks again, buddy. This was amazing.
Awesome. Great conversation. I'm so glad I could be here, and I'll talk to you offline soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Take care.